We talk in loose terms about universities giving public benefit. I think the Irish Studies Centre has done that in shed loads.
It adds so much, it's so giving and so enriching.
Some of the best times of my life, really. It was just great. I absolutely loved it.
I think the most important achievement of the Irish Studies Centre has been to put the Irish in Britain on the map.
I was working here as a technician in the mid-1980s, and I heard about the Irish Studies degree course, which was an evening degree, and I decided to take a few modules and try it out, and the bug bit. For the first time, I think I became aware of not just my Irish family background and heritage, but I got a sense of being Irish in Britain.
We were interested in contemporary experiences, contemporary contribution of the Irish, celebrating that, and looking forward to the future of a more cohesive, integrated community, be it Islington, Camden, Haringey, or be it Great Britain. We are about that community here on the Holloway Road, and honouring their experiences and enabling them to have academic ambition was what it was all about. My role as Director of Research and Consultancy was to evidence the fact that we could make a difference. In terms of Anglo-Irish relations, clearly we were right at the heart of the Troubles. We'd come out of the hunger strikes, the Brighton bombing. There was deep hostility in parts of the community towards those Irish living in Britain.
We were set up a year after the Anglo-Irish Agreement, so it was a period in which there was perhaps more communication and discussion going on about resolutions in Northern Ireland.
The mid-1980s was a period of dramatic change in Irish society. There was a new wave of Irish migration in the mid-1980s, quite a significant wave, and particularly for this country, because the majority of those migrants chose to come to Britain and chose to come to London and the South East in the main. This coincided with a determination within London and London local authorities to support wider participation in higher education.
The students were varied, a reasonable mix is what I would say, of men and women, people over from Ireland, second generation others. The thing that unified them all was that they were really, really keen.
I first heard about the Irish Studies course in the Irish Post newspaper, and I've been looking for a while for something to do at a third level, and it jumped off the page at me, and that was it for me.
There was archaeology, there was history, literature, sociology, and just meeting other people like myself.
I'd had a lot of negative flack from one or two teachers who told me I would never be anything, and I wanted to prove a point, and this was an opportunity that I jumped at.
Studying at the London Met has contributed hugely to my life since. Having then been equipped with the knowledge, the interest, the passion for all of these facets of Irish culture, history and so on, I've really become very involved in the Irish community in London.
This will be the image remembered in history. The Ulster Unionist and Sinn Féin leaders applauding the same thing, a peace deal.
I'd say without doubt the single biggest achievement was the conference we held on Northern Ireland in March 1995. It was the first conference ever that the Democratic Unionist Party and Sinn Féin had participated in the same conference, and the representatives of each assured me they would never have come if it had taken place in Northern Ireland. The headliners was the new Labour Party spokesperson on Northern Ireland, Mo Mowlam, and the other headliner was John Hume of the SDLP.
It brought together people from right across the divide, brought them to the table, and just to meet all those people and to be a part of that is something that, you know, I'm quite proud of.
In 1995, Mary Hickman and I were appointed to write the report for the Commission for Racial Equality on discrimination and the Irish community in Britain.
We commissioned the report to not only establish aspects of discrimination, but to look historically at how Irish people were seen negatively and therefore having stereotypical prejudice surrounding their identity.
In a way, we were coming from the coalface of research on the Irish in Britain, and the CRE fortunately realised that. So I think it was very instrumental in leading, along with all the lobbying of the community groups, especially in London, to the introduction of the Irish as a category in the census.
I think it's given a baseline for people doing research either within the Irish community or academic research. So it is very widely cited by people who have done subsequent work.
We had a long-running lecture series with quite high-profile speakers, mostly coming over from Ireland. And Bertie Ahern came over as Taoiseach to give a lecture, and it led to achieving within the year substantial funding for us to expand the archive of the Irish in Britain. We wanted always to have the course, the research, and the archives for posterity. And of course, it's still going strong.
The funding we received from the Irish government and from the Smurfit Foundation in the late 1990s, that was very significant in terms of enabling us to develop the archive of the Irish in Britain in particular. The collection of over 600 prison letters by Paul Hill of the Guildford Four is not just important in terms of Irish studies, but it also provides an invaluable source for students and researchers of law, the British legal system, and in particular miscarriages of justice. The development of the archive also led to an oral history project and film documentary. I think this was an example of what we do best. Important historical research, but with outputs that have immediate contemporary public relevance and impact.
I think the archive is fantastic. I think it's a mine of very useful information. It's a nice place to work, very friendly people here. The archive is central to my PhD research. I have used the extensive oral history collection to try and grasp how the media has impacted the lived experience of the Irish in Britain. I think collections of this kind are incredibly important because they allow us to get a glimpse into how an ethnic community lives, functions, interacts with its host community.
There's a need to think inclusivity in a new kind of way. Digital inclusion. I would love to see more stories on the web. I would love to see more engagement with people telling their own stories and putting them on the web.
The Irish Writers in London Summer School started in 1995. We've had over 70 guest writers in that time. I think the writers actually really like coming because the students have read and discussed their work 48 hours beforehand and always have such informed and interesting questions for them.
I absolutely love the summer school. The writers that come, the visiting writers, are of the highest calibre, representing all the genres of writing.
My involvement with the summer school has hugely contributed to my life as a writer. We made time to see Edna O'Brien, and that was just outstanding. My daughter was 14 and she just read The Country Girls, and she asked Edna a question, and I think it made Liaison my daughter's evening, because when we had to leave early, Edna blew her a kiss.
The President has long had a deep personal interest in the Irish in Britain, so it was particularly pleasing to be able to show him the archive.
Of several generations who have contributed to where they arrived in so many different ways, but they all brought bits of Ireland with them. And what I think was wonderful as well is all of this is evidence of attempts to care for the Irish as communities abroad.
We helped commemorate the centenary of 1916 in collaboration with the Irish Literary Society by holding a public debate in central London about the role of writers in the Irish revival and revolution. And that took place in a public forum with a very lively audience who had lots of questions. So it was a classic Irish Studies Centre event. 2016 was also very significant for another political event that took place.
Well, the implications for Anglo-Irish relations are, with much else about Brexit, uncertain. Since our country became independent 100 years ago, Irish people have had the right to travel and settle and work in Britain freely. The view of our government, and I think of the British government, is that we would like those arrangements to continue because they benefit both countries.
Brexit, I think, brings into high relief the two most significant areas of our research over the last 30 years. The position of the Irish in Britain and the Northern Ireland peace process.
One of the great advantages stemming from Irish studies is that it promotes understanding of Irish issues here in Britain, and that will be vital in the future when, as I say, we will no longer have the advantage of being partner countries within the European Union.
I think the future of Irish studies is about telling credible stories for our children that will enable us to get through this very difficult post-Brexit moment and to give hope and confidence that what we learn from our heritage can position us well to build great futures for the whole of a highly cohesive community.